Hey, what's up, everyone? So I just finished playing Death Stranding. It's all in my playlist on YouTube. There's a certain Death Stranding Let's Play that you can go check out if you want to see the whole game, see my whole playthrough. I do some commentary in it, but for the most part, since it's a cutscene heavy game, I kind of just left the audio off for a little bit. But without further ado, this is my review for Death Stranding, so let's get into it.
But I'll keep coming.
So Death Stranding is a Hideo Kojima game. I've talked about him in a couple of my previous videos that I've done on this channel before. Hideo is one of my favorite game writers, game directors of all time. I love the Metal Gear Solid games, so if you don't know who Hideo is, I would suggest, well, of course, try out Death Stranding. I love this game, and also go check out the Metal Gear series. Their stealth genre, third-person shooter genre, they are unbelievable games. Kojima definitely brought his style to this one. You can see some similarities in between the two franchises. So to get into Death Stranding, this game has a phenomenal cast of actors who will nail the roles of the game. You have Norman Reedus, who plays the main character, Sam, or Sam Porter Bridges, as he's referred to in the game. You have Mads Mikkelsen. He plays a character named Cliff, who is just absolute badass. He is one of my favorite characters in the game. He has this extremely strong performance. He's been in some amazing roles, and this is easily one of my favorite roles that I've seen him in. Same thing with Norman. There's also Troy Baker. He's been in The Last of Us. He voiced Joel. He also played Booker DeWitt in Bioshock Infinite, and he plays one of the villains in this game named Higgs. And yeah, same thing. He delivers a great voice performance and really brings a lot of depth into the character. There's also Guillermo del Toro, who's in the game, and I had never seen him act before this game, but same thing. He brings a lot of life, a lot of energy to his character. Each of the actors really brings their own unique spin to their characters, brings a lot of life, brings a lot of energy, brings a lot of emotion, depression, happiness, sadness, like everything you can think of. Everything is reflected really well in the characters, and all the actors did an amazing job. So in Death Stranding, you play as Norman Reedus' character, Sam Porter Bridges, and it starts off with you're just a simple delivery man making deliveries for, well, a company called Bridges, who's a part of the UCA, which stands for the United States of America. And what the UCA is trying to do is reconnect the world after the Death Stranding, which was a big apocalyptic event, which basically tied the human world, our world, to basically the afterlife, in lack of a better word, or lack of a word that won't give away some spoilers for the game. But BTs, or beach things is what they call them in the game, are basically whenever a human dies, if you don't burn their body or throw it into basically like this big tar pit in the game, it's a bottomless tar pit, within 48 hours, they will transform into a BT, and the energy released from that is enough to create basically city-sized craters, like just a massive explosion. And the BTs in this game are actually pretty terrifying when you think of them, because you can't. Norman Reedus' character Sam can sense them, but he can't actually see them. The only way he can see them is by using this technology called a BB, or a bridge baby. And basically what it is it's a stillborn who has connection to, same thing, both our world and the afterlife, the land that the BTs come from. So basically you have this scanner that'll blink in the direction of the nearest BT, and the closer it is, the faster it'll start the blinking. And also too, when it gets really close to you, the light will go from being blue, meaning it's close but not too close, to orange, meaning like it's on you. And basically what you got to do is crouch, you got to be silent, and you have to, sometimes if it gets close enough, you got to hold your breath, because they will find you based off of sounds. There's not a whole lot of ways to fight the initial BTs in this game, but later on you gain some tools that'll help you basically sever the connection that the BT has to our world. So basically you expel them from our world, and that's one really, it definitely made getting by them quite a bit easier. And to get into the gameplay of Death Stranding, it has been really divisive between like everyone who's played the game. I had a lot of fun with the gameplay in this game. but that was after the first grueling few hours and kind of trial and error figuring what worked and what didn't. When it came to traversing the landscape, I found the main problem that I had was I didn't understand the inventory system, and two, I was rushing as well. I was so invested in the story of the game, but I was rushing through to get from point A to point B, and I found that's where I was making a lot of my mistakes, where I wasn't caring too much about placing the ladders, using climbing spikes. I just want to climb and get over it. So that's one of the brilliant things that I really liked about this game is that it is a challenge. You are thrown into the deep end basically without a whole lot of explanation as where to go, but that's kind of how life is. You got to figure it out from stuff like that. And once you start to take the time, figure out what the best paths are, what equipment you need, and also too just interacting with the world, leaving your mark on it, and like discovering the marks that other people or some NPCs have left on the world for you to traverse and make your life easier. It's really cool. I found like you're alone in the game for pretty much most of it, except when it comes to the boss fights in the game. But you never truly feel alone because you can interact and have other people interact with your world. And basically, I've helped build a bridge and a road that would take you all the way around the map so you could get away from the mules, who are basically like scavengers in this game. You can avoid some of the terrorists in this game. You can avoid BTs really easily. And also, too, when I started to take a little more time with my routes and getting from point A to point B for the deliveries, I found that like I cared a lot more. I cared about my cargo, and you get rewarded for that. Sam will start to get stamina boosts. He'll start to be able to carry more. He'll get more equipment because when you connect people to the Carl network, which is basically like the internet in this game, you'll get rewarded because of course people get hooked up to the Carl network. They see that the world is basically coming back together. Not only do they want to leave their influence on the world as well, they want to help Sam be able to do that. So they'll give you a lot of tools that come in handy. Some of the most handy ones end up coming in the form of, they call them skeletons, and there's 3 different types. There's one that's a power skeleton, which will allow you to carry more cargo, jump higher. Yeah, it just helps Sam a lot when it comes to carrying his cargo. There's an all-terrain skeleton, which comes, I think, in the most handy for me. I was using this one a lot once I got it, but when it comes to climbing up steep mountain regions, up like shale, slippery surfaces like rock, or even when you get into the snowy mountains, this thing will keep you level. You don't carry as much cargo as the strength skeleton, but you will not fall over. There's also stabilizers you can put on your backpack in this game that'll help keep you upright, and you, instead of having to grip the 2 triggers to have Sam hold himself and keep him level, basically the stabilizer does it for you and it saves you a lot of time. And the last one is a speed skeleton, which there's some urgent deliveries where they give you a time limit to get from point A to point B or do your retrieval missions. And the speed skeleton just basically makes you the Flash. You can run really, really fast with it, and you can also jump pretty far too with it, which is very nice. There's also, you can upgrade your ladders, you upgrade your boots, you get gloves that help you climb a lot easier, you can upgrade your backpack, and then there's a lot of vehicles too. There's some trucks, there's some bikes. Not only do they help you move faster through the area, but also too the bikes can really move up the mountains and slope and in between some rocks. So it's a good fast way for you to carry some extra cargo too, and also like you don't take a lot of stamina away from Sam. But yeah, that's the one thing that I really, really enjoyed about this game is that there's a lot of negative that can come from the internet, and you see that too with some of the people you're trying to connect to it, where they don't want to have anything to do with it. They think it'll only cause problems. There's also some commentary too where characters like Die Hardman or Amelie wear masks. Same thing with Higgs. They wear masks to disguise themselves from the network. They still use it, but they use it in negative ways. But there's so much positive that can come from the connection, and that's what I think Hideo was really trying to show people is once we work together, we leave our mark on the world. People can use it, people can expand upon it, and you can thrive out of it. And that's when I started to learn that and employ it into my own tactics for each delivery. That's when I started to really fulfill each one of my deliveries and just execute it perfectly. And that's one thing that I love. That metaphor kind of gets woven into the story and the dialogue of this game too. When it comes to the combat of this game, like I said, dealing with the BTs at first is a little rough. Dealing with mules can be a little bit rougher too. I always just try to sprint away from the mules, but there are some ways that you can take them down. Stealth is definitely the best mechanism. That you have this rope that can basically choke them out. There's a bunch of weapons that you can get to, both lethal and non-lethal. When it comes... The only time I ever used the lethal ammunition in this game was when you were in the boss fights against Mads Mikkelsen's character, Cliff, because that's the only time where you don't have the repercussions of creating a BT or a potential BT event. Because I didn't want to have to, I read that if you leave a dead body, you don't dispose of it, it can actually level your map and level your game. You could even get a game over screen, and I never want that to happen. So I was always kind of just choking them out or using non-lethal weapons to deal with the mules or just kind of sneak around them. When it comes to bigger BTs, you use these things called hematic rounds, which Sam has a special connection in between both of our worlds, and his blood and some of his bodily fluids are able to be transferred into grenades, ammunition actually too, and that's a way to take out BTs. There's a bunch of different weapons that you can get, but when it comes to dealing with human enemies, definitely either sneak around, use a stealthy approach, or use non-lethal weapons, because if you go out there and you're killing them, you just create a lot more work for yourself that way. And that's one of the ways too that I found this game really kind of tied itself to Metal Gear, where you get rewarded for playing the stealthy, or taking the stealthy route that the game offers you, and also to not the kind of non-lethal routes of playing the game. So yeah, the first few hours of the game can be really grueling, but once you kind of start to care a little more about your routes, about your cargo, you get rewarded for it in big ways that aren't always in your face, so you might not notice them at first, but once you do, you really start to care a lot about how you do your deliveries, what you can use to do the deliveries, and also to leaving your mark on the world and giving likes and helping other people who've left their mark on the world a lot. Because I found there's only a couple times where I found some ladders or ropes were left in places that didn't really take me anywhere. But a lot of people seem to care about getting from point A to point B, and I wanted to do the same when I've left my mark on the world in the game. When it comes to the story of this game, I can't get too much into the spoilers of it, but yeah, Sam is your typical delivery man, but he's employed by the UCA to start east and go west with the chiral network and connect people. And of course, on his way from point A to point B, he encounters numerous problems, which come in the form of BTs, which come in the form of Higgs, who's with a terrorist organization who doesn't want, in a sense, to be controlled by the UCA. He wants to live autonomously with his group of people. All the characters of the game expands. You start to learn a lot more about their motivations, who they are in the game. There's some really amazing twists between Cliff's character, played by Mads Mikkelsen, also too with Sam's identity, with Die Hardman's true plans. Amelie and Bridget have an amazing arc, and same thing too, kind of figuring out who the BTs are and also figuring out who the Bridge Babies are. There's a lot of really amazing characters. There's a character in the game named Mama, and she has one of the most emotional storylines in the game. But this game really drags you through emotional hell at some points, but that just makes you care so much more about connecting these people and connecting the worlds, because they've struggled so much with the BTs and being on their own, that creating this network, it really made me care to connect the world and bring everyone together, because it was going to make lives a lot easier for everyone involved in the game. There are, in Hideo Kojima style, there are a lot of really long cutscenes, especially in the last 4 chapters of the game. Most of it is just cutscene based, but it all weaves the story really, really well. And I mean, the game is absolutely gorgeous graphically. I don't think I've ever seen a better looking game in my life. So when it comes to climbing mountains, I found myself looking around at all the grounds, looking around at the waterfalls, at the sky, some of the plant life they have in the game, which really cool. What I thought was one of the really cool mechanics in this game is there's this rain called timefall, which basically whenever it rains on someone or the life outdoors, the best example I can give is the grass. If you look at the grass, it speeds up the process, like the life process of it. So you look at the grass and it goes from being just dirt to dead grass to all of a sudden green grass, flowers, even some trees at some point, but it's all happening in the span of like seconds where you see all this growth and then death and growth and death and growth and death. And like it was just one of the really cool mechanics where it was kind of beautiful to see the life cycle of so many people come into play. It was kind of beautiful to see kind of life and death intertwined in each other and why it was so important for Sam to complete his mission. As a whole, I absolutely loved Death Stranding. When it came to the gameplay, like I said, the first few hours were pretty grueling, but afterwards I was starting to have a lot of fun with it, a lot of fun shaping the cargo in the ways I wanted to, a lot of fun finding routes through the mountain. And then one of the most fun things I had in the game was what I discovered is if you're on top of like a hill or you're on top of some of the snowy mountains, there's an attachment that you can get called a floating carrier. And basically what it is you attach it to your hip and it's a carrier that floats behind you. You can put your cargo on it and it takes all of the weight for you. So you don't move any slower with it attached to you. But yeah, it just basically floats with you. Or what you can do is if you're on top of the mountain, you can, if there's no cargo on top of it, you can stand on it and you can actually ride and like snowboard down the mountains. And as long as you're careful not hitting any of the rocks or trees, terrain that happen to be in your way, it speeds up the process. It can turn like a 5-minute trip down the mountains into like 30 seconds, which is really, really quick and fast. And it was one of the ways too where like I said, I was rushing through some of the game, but this was a way, like, I wasn't rushing at all. It was just I found a really efficient and quick way to get from point A to sometimes point B, like, all the way. I was able to go right down to where I needed to go without ever hopping off the carrier. The story in this game was absolutely unbelievable, graphically amazing. I had a lot of fun with it. The soundtrack breaks up. Well, the soundtrack in this game is really, really well done. There's a band called Lowro, which did most of the songs in the game, and I'm gonna have to check out their albums. They seem like an amazing band, but the music can sometimes break up the silence of doing your delivery. It kicks in during, of course, the boss fights. It kicks in during some of the BT moments, and it really does an amazing job creating the mood for the situation that you're in. And it was easily one of my favorite soundtracks of the year. Gameplay I had a lot of fun with, and the story of this game is extremely, a lot of people have been using the term Hideo like unhinged. So he had complete creative freedom and he brought it in this game. It's not too out there. I didn't find there was a lot of silly moments like there was sometimes in Metal Gear. A lot of the game is really serious. A lot of the game is scary. A lot of the game is depressing in emotion, especially in the last little bits. But you really start to feel for the world. You really start to feel for the characters and care a lot about them. And that's one thing that kept me coming back into the game, is one thing that kept me through some of the grueling few hours of carrying cargo, just going from point A to point B. When it comes to mission variety, there isn't a whole lot, and if there is a sequel, I'd like to see a little more than kind of just point A to point B. It does break up a little bit with some infiltration missions, some combat missions. The last half of the game, or I should say maybe the last 40% of the game, was unbelievable. It's kind of what I was expecting before we started to see gameplay. It went a little more action-packed, a lot more heavy on the story. Of course, too, you have some really long cutscenes, but I really like watching that. It's extremely cinematic. There's some amazing shots. One of my favorite shots was of Cliff, Matt's character, where basically he has his, I'm just going to call them parademons, but they look like soldiers who he's able to spawn, and they're standing in water. And I'm not going to say the battlefield that they're in for a spoiler's sake, but basically they're standing in water and he's smoking a cigarette and he throws it down and basically lights the entire lake on fire, but it doesn't affect them at all. They start walking, and just the lighting, the music, everything about that scene was really gripping, powerful. And there's a lot of scenes like that in this game. My love of this game, the story, everything about it is why I have to give this game an 8.5 out of 10. I found it absolutely unbelievable, grueling, rewarding, fun. It's just an absolutely gripping game that I think should be on everyone's must play for this year or the start of next year. I would highly say that this game deserves being bought at full price. Play it on the best TV that you can get, but it is worth all the effort you're going to have to put in for the story. It's really unique. You've seen amazing performances. Like I said, some of the best performances I've seen from these actors in this game, and it's just absolutely unbelievable. And I can't wait till we get to see and learn more about Death Stranding and its whole universe.